I froze on the sidewalk, staring at the door that Jason had just slammed in my face. My purse was tossed on the ground, and my phone was still in my hand, with an email notification blinking. 12 years of marriage unraveled in just 20 minutes. Of arguing, and he kicked me out of our home like I was some intruder. The irony of the moment didn't escape me. The email I had tried to show him before his outburst contained the news that would change everything. Dear Mrs. Miller, it is with regret that we inform you of the passing of Margaret Thompson. As the primary beneficiary of her will, you have inherited properties valued at $1.7 million, along with financial assets worth $3.4 million. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. In the taxi on the way to the nearest hotel, tears blurred my vision as I reread the email. Aunt Margaret, the eccentric one in the family that everyone, especially Jason, considered a crazy old lady, had left me a fortune. The same aunt that Jason made fun of when I mentioned that she might be able to help us financially a few years ago. One room for one night, please. My voice shook at the reception desk. It was past midnight when I finally sat on the hotel bed, trying to process everything. My phone rang. It was Jason. I ignored it. It rang again. 15 missed calls. In 20 minutes. Then the messages started coming in. Sarah, you're acting like a child. Come back home now. This tantrum is ridiculous. Where did you get money for a hotel? It's our money you're wasting. In that moment, looking at those messages, I realized something I had ignored for years. It wasn't normal for a husband to control every penny his wife spent. It wasn't normal to have to justify basic purchases. It wasn't normal to be called incompetent for leaving a corporate job to follow my dream as an illustrator. It wasn't normal to be afraid of sharing good news. The next morning, I set up an appointment with Rebecca Winters, the lawyer mentioned in the email. When I walked into the office, I was surprised to see a woman with blue hair and tattooed arms. She didn't at all look like the stereotypical lawyer I had in mind. Sarah Miller, I'm Rebecca. Margaret talked a lot about you. She shook my hand firmly. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. I'm a little lost with all of this. Rebecca handed me an envelope. Margaret left this for you. She asked that it be delivered in person. I opened the envelope with trembling hands and immediately recognized my aunt's elegant handwriting. Dear Sarah, if you are reading this, then I have left this world. Don't be sad. I lived exactly the way I wanted. What I regret is having stayed silent while watching you repeat our family's patterns. Your mother chose to stay with your father despite the control and humiliation. I chose freedom. Now you have the resources to make your own choices. Remember, money is not the real inheritance I leave behind. The real inheritance is the chance to live life on your own terms. With love, Margaret. She knew, I murmured, tears streaming down my face. Margaret had a knack for seeing abusive situations, Rebecca said gently. And if you don't mind me saying, she was right to be concerned about you. When I got back to the hotel, my phone exploded. Jason had found out about the inheritance through my personal email that he always checked for safety. The accounts are frozen, said Ashley, my best friend, when I called for help. I just tried to make a transfer and got a notification. The initial panic quickly turned into determination. Later that afternoon, my parents called. Sweetheart, Jason is devastated. He said you had a breakdown and left home. He's really worried, my mother said in that tone she always used to make me feel guilty. Mom, he kicked me out. Literally tossed my things on the sidewalk. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Jason said you've been unstable lately. That hurt. My own mother believing him without a second thought. Emma, my younger sister, was different. Finally, I always knew that guy was toxic. I'm coming to pick you up. With Emma and Ashley by my side, I hired Jessica Lane, a lawyer specializing in complex divorces. Her office exuded confidence, very different from the coldness of the apartment I shared with Jason. We need to act fast before he starts hiding assets, Jessica explained. And given his controlling behavior, we're going to ask for an officer to accompany you when you collect your personal belongings. Our footsteps echoed in the entrance of the building where I'd lived for 7 years. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was trying to jump out of my chest. Emma held my left hand tightly, Ashley my right, while the officer walked ahead with a determined look. Jessica had insisted we document everything, so my sister also carried a small camera. When the elevator doors opened on the 10th floor, my whole body froze. The last time I'd been there, I left with only a purse. "You can do it," whispered Ashley. "We're here for you." The officer rang the doorbell. Seconds that felt like an eternity passed until Jason finally opened the door. His face changed as soon as he saw me. First surprise, then anger, then that calculated smile he always put on when other people were around. "Sarah, dear, you're finally back home." His saccharine tone contrasted with his cold eyes. Then he noticed the officer. "What does this mean?" "Mr. Miller, I'm here to make sure that Mrs. Miller can retrieve her personal belongings without any interference," explained the officer as he handed over the papers. Jason examined the documents, his smile fading completely. "This is ridiculous. Sarah, can't we talk like adults? Did you really need all this drama?" I stayed silent as we went in. Our apartment, once so familiar, now felt completely foreign. I noticed he had already taken down our wedding photos from the walls. "You have 90 minutes, reminded the officer. I went straight to my art studio, the only space that was truly mine. Or at least, it should have been. The door was locked. "Jason, the key to my studio." "Our studio, you mean? This apartment is paid with my salary." "Please, just the key," the officer interjected. Jason sighed dramatically as he pulled the key from his pocket. Always so dramatic. When I opened the door, my heart sank. Half of my materials were gone. My carefully stacked sketchbooks on the shelf had been rifled through. Where are my large canvases and my set of imported acrylics? "Oh, that junk? I donated them to a charity. You never even used them." No way, those materials were the result of years of saving, bought little by little whenever I managed to hide some money. Ashley took photos of the studio. "Let's document everything that's missing." As we gathered what remained, Jason followed us through the house, commenting on every item I placed in the boxes. "That was a gift from my mom. We bought these books together. I paid for that outfit." Emma finally lost her patience. "Jason, she's not taking the 70-inch TV. They're her clothes and work materials." "Her work materials?" he laughed. "Those doodles barely even cover the cost of the coffee she drinks." I bit my lip to avoid replying. My doodles had once illustrated 3 award-winning children's books before Jason convinced me to take on fewer commissions so I could focus on our relationship. When we reached our room, now solely his, I realized my dresser had been emptied. "Where are my jewels? The necklace I got from my grandmother?" Jason crossed his arms. "In the safe, for security. After all, you disappeared for days, acting irrationally." "Open the safe. Don't boss me around in my own house." The officer stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, personal and inherited items need to be returned." After much insistence, Jason punched in the combination on the safe hidden behind the painting, a code I never knew even after being married for over a decade. When he opened the door, I felt a chill. Besides my few pieces of jewelry, there were documents, a small wad of cash, and what appeared to be a bank statement for an account I knew nothing about. "That's it," he said, handing me only the case with my jewels. I looked at the officer, who gave a discreet nod. Jessica had advised me not to provoke confrontations, just to document everything. When we were almost finished, Jason blocked the exit of the apartment. "Sarah, we need to talk in private. Just 5 minutes." "Any communication needs to be done through our lawyers," I replied, repeating Jessica's exact words. "Is that how it's going to be? After everything we built? I got you out of that tiny apartment. I gave you a life you'd never have with your artistic talents." His sarcasm stung. "Now that you've inherited some money, you think you can just cast me aside?" That was when I realized he still didn't know the true value of the inheritance. I thought about correcting him, about rubbing it in that I was now worth more than he could ever dream. But why? He'd find out soon enough. "Our time is up," the officer announced. "We need to leave now." As the elevator went down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Emma squeezed my hand. "You were amazing." 3 days later, I moved into the beach house in Crescent Bay that had belonged to Aunt Margaret. The contrast could not have been greater. From the gray and white walls of our minimalist apartment to this warm, colorful house with huge windows facing the sea. On the first day, I just sat on the glass-enclosed deck watching the waves. On the second day, I unpacked the boxes with my surviving art materials. On the third, I started drawing. It was like a dam had broken. Years of repressed creativity burst from my hands onto the paper. They were no longer the commercial, carefully sanitized illustrations that Jason considered acceptable. They were raw, emotional images, visual stories of a woman trapped in a gilded cage, of invisible hands pulling strings tied to her limbs, of a butterfly's metamorphosis interrupted by scissors. I worked non-stop for 3 weeks. When Ashley came to visit, she found the studio, an entire room I had transformed, not just a corner like in the apartment, covered in drawings, paintings and collages. "Sarah, this is extraordinary," she whispered, walking among the pieces. "I've never seen you create like this before." "Because I never could," I replied simply. That night, I showed her the folder of emails I had started collecting over the past few years. Messages from Jason criticizing my work, questioning my artistic decisions, suggesting improvements that effectively turned my art into something unrecognizable. How did I not realize he was controlling even this? My voice choked. "Because it happened gradually," Ashley replied. "Just like the story of the frog in water that slowly heats up." The next morning, I received a call from Jessica. "I have news. Jason is contesting the division of assets. He claims that you deliberately hid information about your inheritance during the marriage." "How is that even possible? I didn't even know about the inheritance until the day he kicked me out." "He's claiming that you secretly kept in touch with your aunt and conspired to hide assets. He's also demanding compensation for the financial support he provided for your art career." I felt my stomach drop. Does he really believe he's entitled to my aunt's money? "It's a tactic. He's hoping you'll break down from exhaustion." Jessica paused. "But we have our own strategy. Remember those documents from the safe? We got a court order to obtain copies. Jason had a separate account where he deposited a significant part of the family income without your knowledge. The Sdikping. Preliminary hearing took place 6 weeks after our separation. Jason showed up looking sharp, with his corporate lawyer by his side. When he saw me, he flashed that confident smile that used to make me feel small. This time, I held his gaze without hesitation. His lawyer presented a Jason completely different from the man I knew, a devoted husband who spent years supporting his wife's unstable artistic dreams, only to be abandoned at the moment she received an unexpected inheritance. When it was our turn, Jessica did not raise her voice or make inflammatory accusations. Instead, she methodically presented evidence of financial control. the bank accounts frozen on the day of the separation, the safe with hidden documents, the secret account, and the emails in which Jason criticized even my most basic expenses. Furthermore, Jessica concluded, "We would like to present these therapy records from Mrs. Miller, which demonstrate a consistent pattern of emotional abuse over the years." Jason's face hardened. He never knew that I had been secretly consulting an online therapist for the past 2 years, paying with the little money I managed to save from my illustration commissions. When we left the courtroom that day, Jessica seemed satisfied. "We set the tone. He expected to intimidate you, but we showed that we're prepared." The legal process would continue for months, but for the first time since I married Jason, I felt like I was fighting on even ground. I was no longer the Sarah who shrank from his criticisms or doubted my own perceptions. That night, as I looked around my new studio filled with art I created freely, I realized I had already won the most important battle, the one for my own voice. 6 months had passed since I stepped foot in the apartment I once shared with Jason. The seafront art gallery in Crescent Bay was lit up and crowded, its walls showcasing my new works under the title Interrupted Metamorphosis. The curator, Denise, had reached out to me after seeing some of my illustrations online, illustrations that would have never existed if I was still married. "Are you okay?" Ashley asked as she came over with 2 glasses of champagne. "You seem a little tense." "Nervous," I admitted, taking the drink. "I never imagined I'd be doing my first solo exhibit." "Sarah!" Emma arrived, beaming and accompanied by Rebecca, my blue-haired lawyer who had become a friend. "This is absolutely amazing. I just overheard 2 people arguing about who's going to claim that centerpiece." I looked over at the work Emma pointed to, a large canvas showing a woman emerging from a miniature house-like structure, with fragments of the building still clinging to her like a broken shell. It was the most personal piece in the exhibit. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Denise, tapping lightly on a glass, "I am proud to introduce the artist behind this extraordinary collection, Sarah Miller." Applause swept over me as I walked to the center of the gallery. A few months ago, I would have hidden behind Jason, letting him speak for me. Now, I had found my own voice. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, surprisingly calm. "This collection represents a personal journey from confinement to freedom. Each piece tells a part of the story about rediscovering one's identity after years of living the life someone else expected from you." As I spoke, I noticed a familiar figure at the back of the gallery. My mother was standing alone, without my father by her side, something I don't recall seeing before. Our relationship had become strained after she initially defended Jason, but her messages in the last few weeks hinted at a change. After my speech, visitors came over to talk about my work. An editor of children's books expressed interest in a series based on the metamorphosis metaphor, something to help kids understand that transformations, even painful ones, are just part of life. When I finally got a moment alone, my mother approached hesitantly. "Your work is powerful," she said, her voice trembling, "especially that one." She pointed to a small painting that showed 2 women seen from behind, their silhouettes hinting at a mother and daughter watching a storm. "Thank you for coming," I replied, unsure of what to say next. "Sarah, She took a deep breath. "I'm separating from your father." The news caught me completely off guard. "Mom!" "Seeing your paintings and reading that letter Margaret left for you, which you kindly shared with me, I realized I've been stuck in a similar kind of relationship. Only mine lasted 40 years, not 12. Her eyes glistened with held back tears. "When I defended Jason, I was really defending my own choice to stay with your father all these years." I hugged her for the first time in months, feeling the shared weight of our experiences. "Where are you living now?" "With Aunt Carolyn. For now. She's been wonderful." She smiled weakly. "I guess the Thompson women are much stronger than they seem." Miller Thompson now, I corrected softly. My mother had gone back to her maiden name, adding it to mine after the divorce was finalized. When the exhibit ended, 17 of the 23 pieces on display had been sold, a success that Denise described as exceptional for a first-timer. Among the buyers was a foundation that supports survivors of abusive relationships and was interested in using reproductions of the works in their educational materials. Later that night, the people who had become my support system gathered on my porch. Rebecca and Jessica toasted the official end of my divorce, which had been finalized just 3 days before the exhibit. A coincidence I felt was a poetic closing of a chapter in my life. They're offering an artist residency program, Ashley said, showing me an email on her phone. 3 months in Florence. You should apply. Florence? The idea of traveling abroad was both exciting and scary. Jason always dismissed my travel ideas as impractical and extravagant. Why not? Rebecca raised an eyebrow. You have the resources, the talent, and nothing holding you back here. And I'd be happy to take care of the house while you're away, Emma offered. I gazed out at the ocean under the moonlight, thinking about how my life had transformed. The freedom I now felt wasn't just financial, it was emotional and creative. The wound Jason inflicted by kicking me out, an act that felt like the end of my world at the time, turned out to be the catalyst for my liberation. The next morning, I woke up early and walked along the beach, recalling every step of the last 6 months. The confrontation at the preliminary hearing was only the beginning. When Jason realized he couldn't legally intimidate me, he tried other tactics, from spreading rumors among mutual friends to a sudden change of heart where he claimed he wanted to reconcile. We made mistakes, Sarah, he said in a voice, message that I still kept as a reminder. We can rebuild something better. That house in Crescent Bay would be perfect for a fresh start for both of us. Jessica had prepared me for that. Abusers often try to reassert control when they realize they're really losing their hold on the victim, she explained. It's not about love, it's about possession. The divorce process revealed a lot about who Jason really was. When the judge rejected his claim to my inheritance, he then turned his attention to my artwork, asserting rights over the intellectual property developed during the marriage. He also fiercely contested the division of our joint assets, dragging out arguments over furniture and household items for weeks, not about their monetary value, but as a way to maintain some control over my life. At home, I opened my laptop and found an email from the editor I had met at the exhibit, containing a formal proposal for a children's picture book about personal transformation. Next to it, a message from Denise informed me that 2 more pieces had been sold during the night, including the centerpiece. Sitting in my sunny studio, I began working on the initial sketches for the book. The protagonist would be a little girl who discovers she can change shape, not like it's a superpower, but as a form of self-discovery. Each transformation would reveal an authentic part of herself that had been hidden away. My phone rang. It was Rebecca. I have news, she said without preamble. Do you remember that special fund Margaret mentioned in her documents? The one meant to support artists? Well, the conditions have finally been approved by the court. You are officially the administrator. The news caught me off guard. Me? But I don't know anything about running a foundation. Don't worry, the legal structure is already set up. You just decide which projects to support. Margaret believed that you would understand better than anyone which artists need a boost to find their voice. After hanging up, I thought about the trust my aunt had placed in me, not just with her financial resources, but with her legacy. Margaret chose freedom when society expected conformity. Now I could help others do the same. A week later, I received an unexpected letter. The sender was Jason, but unlike his previous aggressive messages through his lawyer, this one was handwritten. Sarah, I'm not expecting a reply. I just wanted to say that I saw your exhibit from afar, don't worry. I didn't recognize the person shown in those works, not because you changed, but because I never really knew you. For years, I molded you to fit the space I reserved in my life, never realizing I was suffocating what made you extraordinary. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just acknowledging the truth. Jay. I didn't answer. There was no need. That letter wasn't about me. It was about him trying to make peace with himself. My journey was now on a completely different path. On a quiet afternoon, I took a sketchbook out onto the deck and started doodling ideas for my next collection. This one would be different. Not about escape and liberation, but about rebuilding and discovery. The new works would celebrate not only who I had become, but also the endless possibilities the future now held. Emma and Ashley found me there, excitedly announcing that they had signed me up for the residency program in Florence. You really shouldn't have done that, I protested, though not very convincingly. The deadline was today, explained Emma, and you were too busy creating to fill out forms. Besides, added Ashley, someone needs to represent divorced American artists in Italy this year. We laughed together, the sound echoing over the ocean. The same ocean that witnessed my tears months ago now reflected our joy. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. That night I revisited Aunt Margaret's letter. The real inheritance is the chance to live on your own terms. I finally understood exactly what she meant. The money didn't free me. It just gave me the space to break my own chains. The moment Jason kicked me out of the house, which seemed like the end of my world, was really the beginning. Sometimes we need to lose everything we thought was important to discover what truly matters.